These are either million-year-old geodes or the world's most disappointing rocks. And it turns out that smashing them open to reveal the crystals inside isn't an easy task. And that's why I spent 9 weeks tumbling the ones I couldn't crack open so that I could finally reveal if something magical was hiding inside. I had 10 rocks to work with, and I chose to start with the biggest one of the bunch to crack open. I figured that would crack open real easily. And you know, this all started because I saw a rock and thought, I wonder if I could crack that open, and if I could crack it open, would there be something inside? And then I realized that a lot of rocks are actually hollow inside, and oftentimes there are cracks in the rocks where water seeps in and layers of minerals build up, and that's what makes the crystals form. Well, I brought the first rock outside, got my gloves on and a much needed garden tool, which actually ended up being a mistake, and got ready to smash. Started releasing some anger and hitting the rock as hard as I could, but I soon realized that I would need a different tool. So I got a crowbar and started smashing away. But that didn't work either, and let me tell you, I was shocked when both of these tools failed to break open the geode, and for a second I thought maybe these aren't hollow inside and they're just regular rocks? Was I scammed? But then it occurred to me that maybe if I were to try a smaller rock first and then also invest in a hammer and chisel for the bigger rocks, we would be on track to uncovering what was hiding underneath the surface of these things. So I got a smaller rock and tried prying it open with the crowbar. It felt like I was smashing for days and I was getting sort of frustrated. It seemed like I was cracking off some layers of the rock, but it was way harder than I thought to get these open. So I decided to try one more rock, a little smaller than the other two this time, hacked at it with the crowbar a few times until finally it actually cracked open. It smashed in a bunch of tiny pieces and I was hoping to just break it in half, but I remembered we still had 9 other rocks to crack open and the little pieces here were still kind of cool. So I gathered all the pieces, started to examine what we discovered hiding in the hollow part of the rock. The largest geode in the world is 26 feet long, and even though ours were a lot smaller, I was still excited to see how beautiful this one was inside. I was hoping to see a bit of color, like purple from amethyst, but I still had hope that the other 9 would, and at this point, I was more determined than ever to crack the others open after seeing how pretty this one was inside. So I gathered all my tools together that could potentially crack these open while I waited for my hammer to arrive. I chose this tool that looks kind of like a chisel, but I think it was some sort of drill bit, and I took this other tool and started gently tapping on the top of the chisel tool. You're not supposed to strike it too hard, but you're supposed to do it lightly until it opens, and I was so excited when this one easily cracked open with the new method. And this rock cracked open the way I wanted the other one to, in bigger pieces. And upon examination of the inner workings of this rock, it was beautiful. A very magical place inside. And this just juiced me up to crack the other ones open successfully and quickly. So I moved on to rock number 3, tried the method that worked with the other rock, and when that didn't work, I tried it a few more times with the other rocks that I couldn't crack open. I even tried to crack them open like a coconut around the center, and it looked like we were getting somewhere, but we weren't. And then I thought, okay, we really need to figure something out here because this is a very inconsistent method of trying to pry open rocks that are probably millions of years old, which by the way, old geodes like that are actually also found in volcanoes when gas from lava gets trapped in the holes of the rocks and then crystals appear. But anywho, I even tried taking this huge bar and tapping on it with another tool that way, but it didn't work, and I was honestly starting to think that these were just regular rocks, but I still had faith that something lived inside. And I kid you not, I tried to crack open every single one of the rocks in the box, and only a few cracked open easily. I really had no idea just how difficult these things would be to open, and it was really loud too. My neighbors were probably wondering if I was okay. And it was in that moment where a light bulb went off in my head, and I thought, maybe I could use a sock, put the rock inside, and then smash it with my tools until my hammer arrives. So I loaded up my sock, got my tool ready, and started trying to crack it open that way. And you know what? It was the wrench that took home the gold medal here because one of the rocks actually cracked open in the sock. And when I went to remove the geodes hiding inside, this is what I uncovered. This one was way less hollow than the other ones, and it almost looked like a regular rock, but add a little spice. And since this method worked pretty well, I tried with one more rock and it cracked open. This one was really beautiful too, and this is where I got a little bit too confident and thought, wow, okay, we found our method that works. But when it stopped working with the rest of the rocks thereafter, I was duped. And you could see my sock was going through it. So I finally decided that I needed a better method to break open the rest of these rocks, and that's when the tumbler came to my mind. I thought, well, if these can't break open with tools, surely if I tumble them in my rock tumbler, the crystals will be revealed. But that's also the same day my hammer arrived, so I thought before I try the tumbler, I'll try hammering these open, and if that doesn't work, especially combined with the chisel, then we gotta use the tumbler. This was the last hurrah to see if my investment in a hammer truly was a good idea or not. I started hacking at them, and I even tried using the chisel and hammering the chisel lightly at the top, and then I even tried using the back of the hammer. And you know what? There was one rock that I did smash open, and it cracked open, and this is what the geode looked like inside of this one. Not purple, but still really pretty. But even with a hammer, I couldn't crack them open for the life of me. I managed to get this one open after putting all the rocks together and smashing at them, but honestly, it's clear. I really went at this for a long time, and that's when I got my rock tumbler ready to tumble. I proceeded to spend the next 9 weeks tumbling these rocks. Of course, I got some much needed grit. There are 4 steps of grit to smooth them out, and then 1 step of foam tumbling to polish them, and each step need to be tumbled for at least a few days. So even though I knew it was gonna take a while, I thought it was gonna be worth it. I placed the rocks inside the tumbler, covered them with water, closed up the concoction in the tumbler, and took a quick look at the last beach rocks that I tumbled inside of the base. And I realized that the last tumble worked out so well, very beautiful. So this tumble for the geodes is also gonna work out well. I wasn't sure if they were gonna crack open in the tumbler or just get polished and shrink down in size, but we were about to find out. I started a rolling and waited 5 days to check on them. Opened up the tumbler, removed the rocks, wiped off the grit, and examined how they were looking. They shrunk up in size, but I thought that after the next round of grit, they'll look even better, especially when we polish them. I had to change out the water to prep for the second round of grit, and since I couldn't put this down my drain, in the soil it went. And then into the tumbler, the grit went, followed by the rocks and some water, and then they tumbled for another 25 days. So you can imagine how excited I was to pry open the tumbler to see what these were looking like. I had my little helper Raph do the much needed sniff test approval, and I removed the rocks from the tumbler to find that they shrunk up in size and one even cracked open. The one that cracked open was looking really good, but the other 2 had not broken open yet. They kind of just got a bit smaller, so my theory being right on these being just regular rocks was increasing by the minute. But I still had faith because we still had the final step of grit and then the polishing, so back in the tumbler they went for the finale. Burned my ears for another few weeks, and before I knew it, the time passed and it was time to open the tumbler to see how they were looking. I removed the rocks, cleaned them off a bit, examined them. The one that cracked open looked really nice, but the remaining 2 still looked like rocks, and I thought I probably shouldn't polish these if there's still something hiding underneath the surface. And it was in that moment that I decided I would take my hammer and try smashing the remaining 2 geodes open to see if they would finally crack open now that they shrunk in size and got tumbled for many weeks. And by the way, you can find the geodes kit and the rock tumbler in my Amazon shop if you want to try this at home yourself. But anywho, I started with the first rock, hacked at it for a while until it finally cracked open. This is what it looked like inside. It was a beautiful quartz geode, so it was a good thing we tumbled it because I guess it helped it crack open more easily. And the second one had me convinced that it actually was just a regular rock because when I went to hammer it, it would not crack open, and so I wasn't really sure what to do with that one anymore. But what I was sure of was that after spending weeks trying to crack these things open, it turns out that geode smashing isn't easy. I accidentally became a geologist. I turned my apartment into an indestructible rock lab and learned a lot about hammers, patience, and noise complaints. But the good thing is we finally got most of them to reveal their sparkle, and now I'll never have to look at another rock and wonder what would happen if I cracked it open. But you already know that I'm gonna go get some more rocks from the side of the road and throw them in the tumbler.